Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. One of my passions for my show that I have for our country also is to be able to find ways to honor our veterans. You've heard me do the shows in the past where I've brought on veterans organizations. I'm going to be doing more of that again very soon. But there's other organizations that honor veterans in other ways. And I think that we need to think about how to honor our veterans not only from the time when they're in service, the moment they get out of service, but until the time they take their final breath. Because, as I always say, future military people in our country need to know that our country will love them from beginning to end. And with me right now is someone who's doing exactly that, is Brian Safran with Flight of the Flags, and he's going to tell you all about it. Brian, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, like I was saying, I'm glad we finally met because we've had long talks. This man takes some insanely long drives. And I don't know if he called me because he was interested or else he just wanted to stay awake and not run off the road or whatever. But then this Zoom meeting is it's like you're sitting across the table from me. It's nice.
It is good. Yeah, and of course, all of our phone conversations have been brought to you by Patriot Mobile. I don't like when people forget about my sponsor, Patriot Mobile. You see it scroll at the bottom.
I was just going to say, I've been reading the little scroll over there, and it says, "Hey, good for you."
Yeah, well, Patriot Mobile believes in our veterans and loves our military, loves our Constitution, so they do military discounts for people also. So that's the other reason I like to have them on. So if somebody's a prior vet, a prior military or a veteran, they can get a discount. If you go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. Well, Brian, I'll let you tell the story about how we met, and then we're going to get into your organization, because I think it's a fantastic thing that people need to hear about.
Well, the way you and I crossed paths is several months ago, there was something, a celebration there in New Orleans that I don't know if you were covering it or whatever, but somehow you were there. And they had arranged to take 100-year-old veteran, and they put him in a World War II open cockpit trainer, and they took him for the ride of his life. They actually even let him grab the controls and wiggle the wings a little bit. So
that was Captain Dick Nelms, and we did I covered him on a pod. That was about 6 or 7 episodes ago. And I got to interview him there, and hear the remarkable story of this World War II vet who had flown missions during World War II over occupied Germany. And he had his plane had been, hit 300 times on one mission. I mean, he had some incredible stories. And they took him up for an honor flight. Well, not an honor flight, but they let him fly. But it was different from the honor flight, and then different from what you do with Flight of the Flags. And I'll let you continue from there.
Well, I tell you what, since you brought up the honor flight, for people that don't know, elderly veterans are given the opportunity to fly for free to Washington, D.C. and be taken around all the different monuments. And I was fortunate to be a sponsor on one of those. And as we were pushing these elderly people in wheelchairs through there, everybody in the terminal stopped what they were doing, and they were clapping and cheering and saying, "Thank you for your service." And these guys were getting overwhelmed, saying like, "Wow, this is for me."
Right.
So I'm glad that you brought up the honor flights, because if anybody has a chance to be a sponsor, please volunteer and go. I think I got more out of it than the veterans did.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It's just a way to give back, because many of them have fought for our country but have never been to Washington, D.C.
So, well, the thing is, the flight in that open cockpit biplane, I like that idea, because now you're honoring the veteran while they can still appreciate it, just like the people in the airplane terminal.
Right.
But my program, we honor the deceased veterans and also their living families. So just real quickly, bring me up to speed on what your podcasts and stuff are, because when I was working, I was a pilot flying the most complicated corporate jets in the world. And when I quit then, I didn't want to learn another thing. So this podcast and this TikTok, I have absolutely no idea what any of that stuff is.
Well, one of my missions with my podcast is because of my passion for America. When I first, let me go back. Before I went on radio, I had a passion for America and wanted to find ways to protect our country. And I always say save America. People like to say save America, but America's already been saved. We had a man about 2,000 years ago die on a cross for us. So, we've all been saved. Our job, I believe, is to decide to protect America, protect the things that make America the great country that it is, and protect our values, find ways to bring more people together in a world where we're so divided. But I went on the air thinking that I was going to be the next right-wing conservative talk show host, and that was my goal. And I just repeated narratives on the radio, and that didn't, I got tired of it. And then I ran for office, and lost a legislative, ran for a state rep, ran for the legislature here in Louisiana, and lost. But in the process of knocking on doors and talking to people, and learning more about people, I realized how much more we have in common if we kind of come together on things that we can agree on and kind of try to put aside the things we don't agree on. It's a long story made very short as I possibly can to give you. You said you wanted to be brought up to speed, and then I decided to leave radio and just do podcasting full time. I find it's a where the future of radio is, because you can listen when you want and record when you want, and people can listen whenever they want, and they can binge watch or binge listen if they want, and so that's if they're taking long drives, they can listen to 3 or 4 episodes. So, and then of course from that I started, more and more people started recognizing that I liked I have a lot of value in bringing informing people, not through ideologies as much as just informing people and I guess finding guests that have ways to inform us in as much of a non-ideological way as possible. But it happens regularly, but I try to bring in people from the other side. And then from that, people have asked me to do interviews, which is how Captain Dick Nelms, that introduction came to be. And then of course, while I was interviewing Dick Nelms, there's somebody there that knows you, that puts you and I in touch, and you're in Ohio.
That was Pat Quigley, yeah.
And you tell me all about your organization, Flight of the Flags, and I think it is so important what you're doing that I said I got to get you on here. And where do you want to start? Do you want to tell us?
I wished I could remember where I read it or who said it, so I could give proper credit. But they said that all of us have 2 deaths. One is the day that you quit breathing, and the second death is the one that the last time your name is ever mentioned, and then you're just lost to history.
Right.
So I can't do anything about the first death, but I can help push back the second one by trying to keep these people fresh in people's minds. And the way we do that is this Flight of the Flags. What we do is basically we take the folded funeral flags of deceased veterans and police officers, firemen, anybody who's entitled to a military funeral, and we put them on World War II airplanes and we fly them over veteran-themed events. The easiest ones are at veteran-themed air shows because it's all done in one day.
Right.
And we invite the families to bring the folded funeral flags, and it's not just for them, because everybody else at the venue sees all of this stuff going on, and they really get interested. They come over, they're quiet, and they say, boy, I wished I would have known about this. I would have brought my flag. But what we do is people bring their flags, and we have these protected flag bags to make sure nothing happens to the flag. And there's these certificates that we put in there, and that's we have the family fill it out. Who does this flag represent? Oh, this is so and so. This is my father. This is my grandfather, my uncle. And then you just sit back and you just let them talk about the person, and then you listen to the next person. And then, matter of fact, if you look at the stars, it's kind of hard to tell here, but most modern flags are embroidered. Well, we've had flags come in here that were old enough that all stars were individually stitched onto the flag. And we actually flew one flag that had 48 stars on it. So it's kind of
how neat is that?
Well, what happens is you bring your
That was World War I service, right?
Well, you know what? I never thought to go back and see like when was before Hawaii and Alaska, but if people have been, it's been 250 years that we've had veterans going here. So
right.
That's the farthest back that I've been able to research. But I'm going to have to look it up now about what time of the century was that. But what we do is you bring your flag in, and usually we try to have like a local high school ROTC group come on out, and then they escort the flags out to the planes. An honor guard demonstrates the proper folding of a flag. And then as the flags are flying overhead, they do the, I used to call it a 21 gun salute, but I've been corrected. It is a 3-round volley. And then they play taps. And then they land, and then we return the flags back to the families. And the thing that I wasn't prepared for was when you're handing these flags back, these people, a lot of them are bawling. And, it just takes them a while to calm down. Oh, I haven't touched this flag in 15 years other than to dust it, on the mantle. And now, so he goes, I'm going to go home and have a drink to dad and stuff. So it worked out nice. But the way this all got started, since I retired, I've been spending some time at a Liberty Aviation Museum up on the shore of Lake Erie as a warbird mechanic. And even though it's the Liberty Aviation Museum, yes, they have a lot of really nice planes, but they've got cars and they've got fire engines and they've got tanks and big guns. And they've even got a PT boat that when they're done restoring it, you could actually go for a ride on Lake Erie in a PT boat. It's a cool place. But the thing is these airplanes, the B-25, the PBY Catalina, the TBM Avenger, the Stearman, most of them are pretty complicated airplanes. And they need to be used to sit down and keep all of their systems working right. And if they don't fly very much because it's very expensive to do so. And it's kind of like if your kid goes to college and the car is sitting in the garage and he comes home 6-8 months later, now it won't start, or the air conditioning doesn't work. So I was trying to figure out, what can I do to get this B-25 in the air at least once? And so the museum allowed me to sponsor, a ride in there. And we're like, well, this isn't going to be just a joyride. I wanted it to stand for something. Well, if you remember my dad's flag, he was Army in Korea. He never had his flag folded, and he never got his 3-round volley, and he never got his taps because he wanted cremated. And he wanted his ashes scattered in the river, in the park, so it would flow by the park bench that him and Mom would sit at all the time. Well, just a second here. Matter of fact, that's the director of the Lorain County Veteran Service Organization that donated all the flag bags.
I love it. Okay.
It's time. Well, the thing is the park doesn't allow ceremonies like that. So it never happened for my father. Matter of fact, his flag was folded by 2 guys at the funeral home. So when I had this flight schedule, I says, you know what? Dad's flag is going to get taken care of. So I got an honor guard. They came on out there. My whole family was there, and families of the other flags that were there too. And in front of everybody, they folded my dad's flag. And then we put it on the airplane, and as it flew on over, he got his 3-round volley. And he got his, I couldn't hear it because it's pretty noisy up there.
Yeah, right.
But still, my dad's flag was taken care of. And then that was it. I mean,
so your dad's flag was the first one to take the flight of the flags. Wait, I'm gonna pause you there for 1 second. What is your website?
Oh, flightoftheflags.org.
So www.flightoftheflags.org. flightoftheflags.org. Flight of
Yeah.
the.
Just all one word, nothing capitalized. And you'll notice when you go onto the website that, as I said, I'm not all that technically advanced here. And my friend's been setting it on up, but there's a lot of things we need to tweak. But still, you get an idea of what it is and how much we've grown. But like I say, that first flight was going to be it for me. I mean, it's expensive. But then a year later, my brother-in-law passed away. And he was in the Navy doing silly things with something called a Swift boat in Vietnam.
Huh.
And his daughter, my niece, came up and says, "Hey, Uncle Brian, can we do something like that for my dad? And how can you say no?" So we had another flight of the flags, except this time here, not only do we have the B-25, I wanted his flag flown in a Navy plane. So based right there at the museum is this beautiful TBM Avenger torpedo bomber, arguably the nicest one on the planet. Its restoration is beautiful. So he flew on that. And then once that flight was over, I was done. Well, Charlie Cartledge, who owns the airplane through Lake Erie Warbirds, because his airplane's so nice, he's invited to a lot of different veteran, different air shows and stuff. And when he was there, he's going like, "Hey, there's this kind of cool thing we do in Ohio, where we take the folded flags and we fly them around. And would there be any interest in your group in doing that?" And I says, "Yeah." So then what I would do is I would make arrangements with them. They would advertise, "Hey, bring your flags." And I would bring all the flag bags donated by the guy that I just hung up on. And and then I would have the certificates, and then they would have like a volunteer helping me. And then we would have a flight of the flags. And when it was over, they says, "Okay, this is a permanent part of our air show. Now we want to have this." And so they took it over. They sponsored their own airplanes. I don't have to spend a penny. And then Charlie went to another place in Akron, and they did the same thing. And then we're in Pennsylvania, and the people down in New Orleans are hurrying, trying to get something set up because the 250th anniversary of the United States is coming on up, and they want to fly some flags for that. So, so we're in 4 states now, and this year here is special for us. Not only do we have our Flight of the Flags schedule, but the Vietnam Traveling Wall Memorial is going to be in Northern Ohio at the end of this month. And so now we're taking the folded flags of deceased Vietnam veterans, and we're flying it over that wall. And then for the 250th, we're also taking a bunch of flags, and there's several different parades set, but mostly we have a nice veterans cemetery down just south of Cleveland, and we're going to do a proper flyby for all the veterans there. So the thing is that beautiful TBM Avenger, we were at a different air show. We weren't doing a Flight of the Flags thing, but one of his cylinders, the exhaust valve and stuff, all broke on up. And I don't say it turned into like a bunch of little round marbles that just beat the heck out of this piston. And all of those little chips you see there, all of that metal went scattering through the whole engine. So we couldn't fix it there. So we had to take the propeller off, the engine off, the wings off, the tail, and put everything on a truck and bring it back on over. And we're struggling to get it going to be ready for this. On May 28th is we're going over the Vietnam Traveling Wall. Now, thanks to the generosity of a lot of the local veteran groups, I went to all of these, the VFWs, the American Legions, the AMVETs, and they all sat down and says, we want to support this. And so they came up with probably half of the money that we needed to do this. And they're just saying, just let us know when it's flying. We want to come out and take a look at it. So we've got the propeller on last week, and then it ran last week as well. And it looks like, weather permitting and stuff, will probably take it for its very first flight this week. Now, we're setting up a Flight of the Flags in Franklin, Pennsylvania, with a group that has this big World War II DC-3 called Beach City Baby. Well, unfortunately for them, they were looking up in their wings and it's all corroded and everything. So now they got to fix that. And that's going to be expensive. So now it worked here in my neighborhood. I'm going to be going to the Franklin, Pennsylvania area and going to their group. And I expect them to be just as, forthcoming and generous. The people down in New Orleans, where we're trying
Right.
to get, there's a bunch of VFWs and American Legion Halls over there that express an interest in trying to, carry on the program.
You know what's I want to interrupt for a second. What I think is really significant about what you're doing, you're of course on the outside, everybody goes, "Well, you're honoring deceased veterans. Great, good for you, nice. You're honoring deceased veterans. Everybody, and that's honorable. And that's
Mhm.
extremely honorable. And I think it's something that surviving, living veterans, old, young veterans, all need to see that other veterans have been honored after they're gone, and as you said earlier, that second death is pushed off even further.
Well,
Okay,
and
but what I think is even bigger here is the effort of all the different organizations that you're
yes,
bringing together. Like you're bringing together all these different organizations, and you're basically honoring the military. You're rebuilding planes. That's out of respect, not only for the veterans, but for our veterans before that who flew their missions or performed their duties with this military equipment.
Mm.
You're bringing together civilian groups that are that are being made to feel in some ways whole, because I think by when you fly their flags, their relatives or friends that may not have
Yes,
been honored, you're closing that loop for them. You're
yeah,
making them whole in their mourning or in their honor.
right.
And so your organization does so much more than just fly a veteran flag.
It,
It brings so much
mostly
more
this is
together.
mostly this is for the families, but what we try to do is dependent on the mobility of some of the veterans around here, is when we take these flights, we try to take a couple of veterans along with them to sit down there and escort, the flags for us. I don't think we've ever gone up without, somebody from the service sitting down there and paying homage to these people whose flags were carrying it. But now, the thing that excited me the most about this is one of the very first flags on that very first flight was my best friend, who was a Seabee in World War II in the Navy. And he was also owned his own airplane, had a private pilot's license. And I have tried since Flight of the Flag started, that very first flight 7 years ago. I have been trying for 7 years to get that Navy man's flag on a Navy fighter jet. And thanks to the gentlemen down in New Orleans, I don't know if you could take this out, see this, but they took this flag supersonic. It was probably one of the coolest days of my life was when he sent me that picture. Well, you've kind of muted out here. I can't hear you.
So people who are watching the video on this, you'll hear my co-host in the background. That's why I have to turn the sound down sometimes.
Well, if they
but
go to the website, you can go to, like, I guess the gallery page where it goes to a lot of these different places we've gone to. There's one place that you'll have to find it in there. But each place we go to, the flags are flown like on a different kind of airplane. This one place south of Chicago, they put them in 4 different airplanes. I'm sorry, they have a flight of 4 airplanes, but they put all of the flags in one plane. And they do this missing man formation. And you see these 4 planes flying on over, and then one peels on up and flies away. And that's the one that's got the flags on it. So everybody can see that.
Oh.
There's my flags right there.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's got to be heart-stopping and tear-jerking at the same time.
that's thanks to the people with the TBM Avenger reunion in Peru, Illinois. So
So let's talk about you got the idea for your best friend and your father to fly them,
Yeah.
and then your best friend, now you've got to where he's gotten to have a supersonic flight, in that's amazing. That picture is absolutely amazing.
Well, so
Um,
when you think about your tax dollars, just be thinking a little bit of it went into the fuel for that F-18 that flew my friend's flag. So yeah.
so now, okay, you formed you had kind of a group that was kind of loosely coming together. You got this idea, how can you do this more? You started reaching out, you get more groups involved in it. So you officially became an organization, Fly to the Flags.
And the reason for that is I would go to all these different veteran places, not just for Flight of the Flags. We have other programs. Operation Guitar, veterans get a free guitar, 10 free lessons, and at the end of the 10 lessons, you get to keep the guitar. So there were reasons why I went around in there, and they would say, we really want to sit down there and support this Flight of the Flags thing, but part of our rules is we can't write a check to an individual. If you want our help, you're going to have to start a nonprofit. And it's a lot easier than I thought, and sure enough, these people have come through. So as long as you give us that nonprofit stuff, they've been very generous. Like I say, they paid for half of getting that engine done. So I can't thank them enough.
An engine, I'm sure, is not inexpensive.
Oh.
So let's talk about. I want to go into that a little bit. So you named so you had a name for the organization.
Yeah.
You get the organization started. Now you got to wait for people to donate money to it. Let's talk about the guitar program. Is really interesting. Can you talk about the guitar program a little bit and how that funds Fly to the Flags?
Well, that doesn't. Well, maybe in a very indirect way it might have, but that Operation Guitar is. I had read a story about. Or medical thing about how veterans with PTSD benefit from having music lessons. And so I went to the person I just hung up with, the director of the Lorain County Veteran Service Organization. There's 88 counties in the state of Ohio, and every single one of them has a veteran service organization. So you're never very far away from people help you. Well, I pitched this idea to him, and he's going like, I love the idea, but why sit down there and limit it to just people with PTSD? He goes, the problem we have in most of the veteran services organizations around the country is that the veterans don't know that they're there. So they have no idea all of the benefits stuff that are there. So he goes, what we're going to do, we'll start your program, call it Operation Guitar, and you sign up. And thing is you have to come to the Veteran Service Office to get your guitar. And before you get your guitar, then you get a benefits briefing. And then you get your 10 lessons in the conference room of the Veteran Service Organization. So you're used to going in there, and then they're telling other veterans. So the foot traffic at there has really dramatically increased. When we started out in January of last year, we ordered 10 guitars. Before they got delivered, we had to increase the order to 20. And then we had to order another 20 and stuff. So by Thanksgiving of last year, we had 70 veterans get free guitars and free guitar lessons. Matter of fact, next Tuesday, we're having a graduation party at one of the VFW halls. And if you've never heard of Mission Barbecue, that's the barbecue place to go to, because it's all about, the walls are nothing but veteran stuff. At noon, everything stops and they have the national anthem sung. They're just another plug for a veteran.
And where is that? Where is that again?
It's called Mission Barbecue, and there's a couple of them around here where I live. I don't know how far they're spread out there, but matter of fact, this week now, every day a different branch of the service gets free food. If you come in on this day and it's Navy Day, if you're in the Navy, you get free food. If you're in the Army on Tuesday, you get free food. On Veterans Day, every veteran gets a free sandwich. So it's I like supporting people that support the groups I believe in.
let's talk about how the finances formed up, how you now how other organizations are funding your organization.
Yes.
And I've been scrolling your site at the bottom for people to
Oh,
go to www.flytotheflags.com
mhm.
or .org. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So how do people help? How can other people? How are these
Well,
other organizations helping? How can other people help to be able to bring this to the next level? Maybe somebody, and then I want you to even go into how do people maybe in another state where there's not one of your official Fly to the Flags
mhm.
organizations, how can maybe they get their loved
Well,
ones or their veterans, flown in a plane?
if you go on the website, there's like several different places where you can contact us. We don't have it to the point where there's like a little donate button, but we're working on it. But we've been so generously supported by all the veterans groups, and we haven't even tried to look into local sponsors or whatever. But this is where bumping into you is a godsend, because now that we're getting to the point that we could use a little bit more exposure, here you come and says, "Well, here, I'm your man." So you
Well, I
pen it
want to
up.
find out how more people can help you because this is such an honorable thing in so many different ways,
Well,
not only to, I think, bring awareness to the deceased veterans, but to veterans that are maybe suffering
well,
today, and it gives them a sense of involvement.
one way you can help is wherever you're at in the country, if there's a veteran group, somebody who has like World War II airplanes or something like that, if you could just make them aware that we exist and that would they like to become part of it, and then just have them contact us or tell me who they are so I can reach out and contact them and try to bring them into the fold. And that's exactly how it's worked. We're doing the thing with the New Orleans. I'm sure we're going to have everything established in time to fly flags for the 250th anniversary. This poor airplane that's got corrosion problems in Franklin, Pennsylvania, I don't know when we're going to get that airplane in the air, but eventually it will be. And, just like myself, they're in need of some help, because what's it take to fix the corrosion in two DC-3 wings? You know, I have no idea. They haven't told me what that's
I
going to
have
cost.
no idea. I'm not. I don't know anything about planes. I just know that I'm really enjoying how much how much work you are putting into
Oh,
the planes in this organization to be able to honor our veterans. I think I'm enjoying this.
well, and the thing is it's ending up not being anywhere near the effort that I was worried that it would be. Is now that we got it started, these veterans groups, all of them meet one evening a month where you're invited to come on in and bring up something. And I just send them a little package first saying, like, this is what we do and who we are. And just look it on over, and I'll be available on that evening if you have any questions. And they let you talk for about 2 to 4 minutes. And then you go home, and then a week later they say, "Hey, we voted on this thing, and here we decided to write a check to you." So that's how it's been working. And
So mainly y'all been supported by other veterans organizations. That's what
right now it has only been supported through different veteran groups. Now,
so can you
there's
name
plans.
any of those veterans groups? Maybe people can support those veterans groups and
Well,
ask them to support you all.
well, I'm
Or
surprised.
hopefully maybe on your website you can have a little donation link eventually. Or if they email you, can people find a phone number? If people email you, can they maybe mail a check old school and like?
That's how it's done. Very rarely have I gone and physically picked up a check at their hall, which is come by mail. But then the thing is I would always go to their next meeting to get up and to say thank you, saying like, hey, we appreciate it, and I'd give them an update. Look, here's what's happening with this airplane, and your money helped do that. And what surprised me is they sat back there. Almost all of them said, "You know how many checks we write in a year?" And I go, "I don't have a clue." He goes, "Do you know how many people stop in afterwards and say thank you?"
Right.
I can count on one hand that. I mean, people come in. Don't get me wrong; it's a good cause or whatever else they wouldn't have donated. But when they leave, then that's it. So it's been a pleasure working with these veteran groups, and I was surprised how many VFW halls there are in my county. And then there's the American Legions in our county, and then the AMVETS in our county. I mean, they're everywhere. I would have thought it would have been like one or two VFWs that would draw from everywhere, but no, and it's amazing what they do, because when I'm in there asking for money, there's other people in there too, and then they print out like, hey, we donated so much money for this. A lot of money went to different veteran memorials. Some cities would put up design and put up their own veterans memorials, and
Right.
and the guy I hung up on, they donate hugely to these veterans memorials.
So basically what's happened is a lot of these bigger veterans organizations are bringing in money, but they're helping the smaller organizations like yours.
That's what I'm finding out. There's my partner, the one that does the website. He has a thing called, "Is your dog going to bark at my dog?" This guy here works his butt off. He's got a thing called Veterans Who Care. If you're a veteran and you need to get a sofa moved from your daughter's house on over here, something like that, he shows on up with the truck and two guys, and any day of the week, if you need it done, they haul it for free. And if you're a veteran who's a little tight on money and down on his luck, and your plumbing goes bad, he's got another group that the name of it escapes me right now, but they'll come on out and look at, oh yeah, that plumbing needs fixed, and we believe you can't pay for it. And then they just write a grant, and you're taken care of.
Right.
So there's all sorts of people like this. I am just finding the tip of the iceberg of all of the different. Hey, you go onto these veteran service organization websites, and they usually have a tab that says veteran-owned local businesses. So you can look down through there and says like, hey, if I'm going to get my house painted, why not support a veteran rather
Exactly.
than yeah.
Well, now we just need to get a donation link on your site. But in the meantime, what I like is that people can actually, probably be able to contact you via email off the site and be able to help the organization. But so let's, as we wrap up a couple quick questions to kind of not only you're gonna say something?
When you were talking about donations and stuff, the funniest one I ever saw was this comedian who was pretending he was a televangelist, and he goes, write your name and address on the back of a $20 bill, put it in the mailbox, and it'll get to me.
Yeah, I don't think that's a happen in today's post office, but that's a whole other story.
Oh, but the thing is anybody who does donate, we, because we're a nonprofit, we recognize your gift and provide a donation form saying who you are, how much you've given, what it specifically was it for. And then I think it's called like a IRS W-9 form or something that you could use on your next year's taxes to sit down and get a tax deduction for.
Right.
Yeah. I'm learning all sorts of new things.
So all right. So for the people that want to find out if there's a flight of the flags in their area, they can go to your website, find locations. Mm-hmm. People that might not be in your area, in those areas, they can they can start one, yep. or they can either start one, or they can contact you and kind of find out where they might be able to go.
Yeah, this isn't a trademark thing or a franchise or anything. What I'm doing now is I'm fortunately finding these places that are in other states that once I explain what we're doing and they're acceptable to it, then they run with it on their own, which leaves me free to sit down there and go try to find the next group to come on. And I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to going down to New Orleans. I used to live in New Orleans for a short period of time, and I'd love an excuse to go back down there and see in there.
When you come down here for that, I'll get you a po' boy. I'll bring it. If you've seen, I have there's a shortstop po' boy near where I live, and
Yeah.
Shortstop Po' Boy is one of the sponsors on my show, so I have to bring you to the Shortstop Po' Boy.
Well, that's
But
fine. But the one thing I didn't get used to that surprised me is up here in Ohio, in the summertime, everybody pulls out their grills and they're cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. Down in New Orleans, they've got these crawfish boils, and they've got this big boiling pot, and they put in a great big thing, and they're eating these crawfish. Going, well, that's different.
I just went to one on Saturday. But look, and I love, believe me, it's more of a gathering than it is a feast. Well, it's a feast, but it's a gather. It's the gathering that's just as important. But again, let's talk about people that as your organization is growing, they can help. But how can somebody get one of their loved ones' flags flown on your? I know we've talked about it a couple times, but I want to kind of start closing out on that so people can be reminded how they can.
Well, we'll accept any flag. Matter of fact, usually when we're flying, we average like around 20, 25. But for the dedication of this one local veterans memorial, we had 78 flags. I mean, we had so many, we had to get another airplane. And another thing about your local, your taxes going to good use. I filled out the paperwork hoping to get a Air Force flyby to start this. And sure enough, their opening ceremony had 2 F-16s screaming on over top. And then we had our TBM Avenger and the B-25 carrying the flags. It turned out beautiful. But yeah, the one thing is like if you have a flag and you can get it to us, of course we'll fly it. But the last thing we want to do is take the flag out of your physical possession. Please don't mail the flag, hoping it gets done, because one of the things we do on each flag, we also put in your contact information so that there's no way in the world we cannot screw up, won't screw up and not get you your flag back. But I guess the thing to do is there's a list of all the places that we're doing it now, which is going to be updated. And I guess the answer is let's start a flight of the flags somewhere close by you, and then your flag could be the first one on, the inaugural flight. I'm looking forward to it.
Hopefully not my flag anytime soon. But but when you're ready to come down here, let's start one down here. Let's work with that group that was with Captain Dick Nelms, and
there's a group down there called Big Easy Wing or something. I think I remember right. And I'm dealing with a lady there. She's my point person, and she's all excited about doing this. We sent letters out to all the VFWs in the area, which she wanted me to contact them first, and then she would follow on up and go in there. So I think I'll be very surprised if we don't have a nice setup, especially with the spur of, hey, this is the 250th anniversary. Wouldn't it be cool to do it, this year, as opposed to just a flight next year? So.
Well, Brian, any final words that you want to close out on and getting people involved or anything we've forgotten to tell people about, on the Flight of the Flags program that you have?
I don't know why I'm amazed at my age, but it's amazing to me the interaction between all of these different people that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. I mean, it's the domino that goes, like here, the friend down in New Orleans, his name's Pat Quigley, retired from the Navy. He's the one that was pushing, saying, I want a Flight of the Flags down here. And he's the one that connected me with the F-16 pilot who flew my friend's flag supersonic.
And me, right?
Then he got me your contact information, says, this guy was here and you need to talk to him. And he was right. So like I say, you're I got the first stage of the rocket going here, and I'm counting on you to be the second stage that moves us on down into orbit here. And, it's a pleasant feeling knowing that you've accomplished something, that something should live beyond you that's worth having continue. So, Matter of fact, to hold off that second death for my dad, I'm having the guy on the website. It's going to be Flight of the Flags in honor of David Safran, U.S. Army, Korea. So
I love it.
So everybody will be reading my father's name.
I love it. You're putting. I love that you're putting off his death because what's another good point to make is Flight of the Flags probably puts that second death off for many veterans because now their flag is not only flown, has their name on it, has a little certificate on it, and now when it gets memorialized in somebody's home, that name gets said every time somebody sees it.
Well, speaking of the website, we have like links for people that have supported us and everything. And would it be possible to put a link to your podcasts or something? To
yes, absolutely. I'm gonna send you. Okay, I'm gonna send you links to the show, and we'll do that. But Brian, let me close out. And I thank you so much for being on the show, Brian. I can't tell you how much not only honored I am to have you, but how honored I am that you're working so hard to honor veterans. Also,
hopefully, you lit the fuse here, and we'll. Well, I tell you what. Let's at the very least, let's get back together like in a year, and because I know
we'll be talking before that. We'll be talking before that. Let me tell the listeners to please share the show with somebody. Share the show with a veteran. Share the show with somebody that may have a family member that has a flag that would like to have their flag honored in this way. But even more importantly, see how you can get involved in promoting this organization, because I truly believe, as I say with all the veterans organizations, it's little things like this that we can do to not only make our veterans now feel important and make our family members of veterans that are deceased also feel important, but it also helps future members of our military, because as I've always said in the last shows, if we show future veterans, future prospective people in the military, that our country will respect them after they leave military service, even after they die, we will have more people proud to be in our military. Thank you so much. And
let me just leave with one thing for these veterans, that they probably don't realize it when they're 20 years old and they sign on up. But you're going to be 60 and 70 and 80 someday. A friend of mine who just recently passed away, I was visiting him in the hospice ward at the local VA hospital. And he was saying, I can't imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars the government has spent on all of my health. He goes, and I haven't paid for one pill. I mean, that's one of the biggest benefits to all you veterans is the fact that your medical care is taken care of.
That's right. That's right. All right, Brian, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please share the show. And God bless the United States of America.
Yes, sir.